My name is Ettie Johnson. The topic I chose to research is climate change adaptation in the Northwest, planning for culture and resources. With this, I asked, what role do climate change adaptation plans play in preserving the cultural practices of Indigenous communities? And from this, I used 3 plans from 3 different tribes, the Jamestown Squaw tribe, the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes, and the Swinomish Indian tribal community. I want to start off by presenting a quote from a tribal elder from the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes. Someday, we are going to talk about the plants that we do not see. They will probably not see it, but they will remember, oh, so-and-so told me about it. They will pass it on to their children and their grandchildren. It will not be there, but it will still be part of our history. So climate change adaptation plans are working documents formed by tribal communities and in some cases outside entities such as university research groups and climate change initiative groups. The tribal communities will then identify resources that are at risk of being negatively affected by climate change and possibly even lost. The tribe will then place these resources into categories such as high or low priority. I personally focused mostly on the high priority categories because they also rate high in an cultural aspect, which is very vital to these communities. In the end, they form strategies to mitigate the effects of climate change on cultural traditions and important resources. So kind of get a sense of region in place for these different tribes. The Swinomish Indian community has descended from groups and bands originating from the Skagit and San River valleys, coastal areas surrounding nearby bays and waters, and numerous islands including Hidalgo, Camano, Whidbey, and the San Juan Islands. Currently, they reside on the Skagit River Delta in the Puget Sound in Washington State. The Jamestown Squaw tribe and their ancestors have resided on the Olympic Peninsula for thousands of years. And the Confederated Tribes of Salish and Kootenai and their ancestors lived in territory what is now known as Western Montana, parts of Idaho, British Columbia, and Wyoming. This Aboriginal territory exceeded 20 million acres. Today, they reside on the Flathead River on over 780 miles between western Montana, northern Idaho, and southern Canada. So some of the resources that these tribes have identified overlap mostly between the Jamestown Squaw and the Swinomish Indian community because their regions are so close. So for these 2 communities, entities that are at risk are coastal resources such as salmon, shellfish, sea level rise threatening their homelands, as well as roads leading to traditional harvesting areas and sacred places. Forests, as well as plants and animals that reside within them, are being devastated by wildfires. The Confederated Tribes of Salish and Kootenai see resources at risk, such as their forests as well, due to wildfires. The quality of air from pollution and wildfire, quality of their water and spawning areas for fish, the health of their community, and something that overlaps between all is the culture within these tribes. So to kind of introduce how resources intertwine with culture, you have to realize that these resources are directly related and are intrinsic to these people. So, for instance, the Jamestown Squaw tribe as well as the Swinomish Indian community, have practiced canoeing for thousands of years. They build these canoes out of western red cedars, which are currently threatened by wildfires, logging, replanting of 1 or 2 species. So in time, if there isn't any more western red cedars left, this tradition is going to be a past tradition and will probably just be passed down through stories. The Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes do a river honoring every year. Recently, it's kind of been changing into an educational opportunity, showing or giving kids and community members education and knowledge about resources that are very important to the tribes. So I wanted to add in this quote from a Swinomish Indian tribal community elder. It will show how losing some of these resources will affect their well-being. Our wealth comes from the salmon, and it comes from the resources, from the waters, and those continue to decline. We're going to be unable to pursue a livelihood in that way. Our biological cycles are attuned to the life cycles of the salmon. And when we have to force ourselves to adapt to other patterns, it's generally going to have severe impacts on our well-being, our mental or social or psychological well-being. And it creates stresses that contribute to the weakening of the Swinomish tribal community as we know today. Wellness defined by the Swinomish Indian community includes community cohesion, food security, ceremony, knowledge transmission, and self-determination. If you strip this community of resources, they will lose their self-determination, their knowledge, their ceremonial practices, food security, and community cohesion. So to mitigate the effects of threatened resources being lost, these tribes come up with adaptation strategies, being water management, wildlife management, restoration projects, identifying species that are at risk, promoting all-around better environmental management practices, reducing stresses on streams. These are all things that these tribes have identified as strategies that could be implemented in the future. However, there are limitations to the implementation of these strategies. First, the effects of climate change may outrun the time needed to implement these strategies. Even the time it would take to see a positive outcome from them might not be quick enough. The cost of implementing these strategies is unknown. Even the climate change adaptation plan in itself requires funding. And most of all, many of these implementation strategies are regulatory, which means they require government, federal, private entities for partnerships. So some solutions that these tribes will combat the limitation are public education outreach, partnerships to gain awareness from outside communities, collaborating with elders, and transmitting knowledge from generation to generation, phasing and scaling of strategies, being able to move things faster or slower if they need to, and using their indigenous rights to gain government leverage. So I ask again, what role do these climate change adaptation plans play in preserving the culture? And going through each one of these, it was really relevant that this need for government or partnerships was almost in every adaptation strategy. So it goes to show that there's so many obstacles to get there that this is a working document, and it's being used as a way of being prepared for the future. It's also open to the public, so it also gives another document for outside communities to read and understand the effects of climate change on Indigenous communities.